What's up guys, Spencer here. In today's video, we're here at Hobby Action Raceway. Going to be showing you some of the things that I've been finding recently, club racing here at Hobby Action. This is the Team Associated B7 vehicle. I know many of you guys that have been racing this car this year have been trying to find alternative setup features, upgrades in the car to try to figure out how to maximize your speed and consistency on the track. The last few weeks, I've been club racing here at Hobby Action quite a bit, working with the local scene here, and I've been able to find a lot of really critical and tangible upgrades or pieces to the car setup that's made a really big difference in my racing and the locals here at Hobby Action. And I wanted to share with you guys in today's video to try to maximize your guys' speed, consistency, and experience racing cars. All right, I'm gonna make this plain and simple: chassis length. People overthink what they should run for chassis lengths. I'm gonna make this very easy for you guys to understand when and where you should run the short chassis, the long chassis, if you run the J-Concept one, if you don't want to run the J-Concept one. Basically, when you're running on a surface like carpet or an artificial surface like Coyote Hobbies or Hoosier is when I would run the long chassis. If you're running on tracks like Hobby Action, SDRC, or Trackside Hobbies, or anything similar to those style, traditional, slick, normal surfaces, I would run the short. Here at Hobby Action last few weeks, I built a brand new B7, did some more running with it, and I ended up switching to the short chassis and instantly found a lot more consistency and speed and comfort with the vehicle. But when going to surfaces like carpet, my experience from running at the Island Speedway track or even Florida, the carpet champs that we had earlier a few months ago or a month ago, we ended up switching to the long chassis and having a lot more consistency and speed. There really isn't anything more to say about when and where you should run the chassis other than I think with these services like Hobby Action, SDRC, and Trackside Hobbies, the short chassis is by far the more superior chassis. And then if you go to tracks like carpet or even an artificial surface, you run the long. Plain and simple, conversation over. So I did forget to mention for you guys, I know also people are going to be asking, does the Team Associated chassis work differently than the J-Concepts chassis? Personally, I haven't been able to see a performance difference on the track, but I will say the difference between the Associated chassis and the J-Concepts chassis, other than the obvious color, the J-Concepts chassis is about 7 to 8 grams lighter than the Team Associated chassis. So if you were looking to get the maximum weight loss out of your vehicle, the J-Concept one is lighter. But for performance on the track, for speed, I don't know if there's really much difference or any really tangible time difference for speed and consistency. So the next thing that's also really critical with the front of the car is the front bulkhead. As you can see in the frame, this is the 2.5 degree front bulkhead, and the kit comes with the 0 degree front bulkhead. I personally have been liking the 2.5 degree front bulkhead because of how high the traction is that we race at. To me, the 2.5 bulkhead, when you're driving around the track and as you're steering, it always transitions more weight to the rear of the vehicle. And when you decelerate and go into corners, it doesn't dive on the nose as hard. What that kind of does is it gives you a little bit more comfort when you're throwing the car into corners to have a little bit of a smoother steering feel. You also kind of have to readjust a little bit of your caster, which we'll get into in the next part. But for as far as upgrades go and the things that made a big difference on the track, the 2.5 bulkhead over the 0 degree bulkhead with the positive towards the front of the vehicle has dramatically changed the consistency jumping and landing into corners. That seems to be the biggest thing that I've noticed. I think that the 0 degree probably corners the fastest going around the track, but with being off-road and having different obstacles, I think the plus 2.5 bulkhead is by far easier to drive in the jumped obstacle sections. Going over into the next part, as you can see here, is the front Camber link options. We make a few different versions of the Camber link. The kit comes with 0 Camber link positions, which is technically a longer camber link than what I'm running currently here. I am running the -2 carbon fiber plates, which shortens this camber link by 2 millimeters from the kit. Basically, what that does is it basically raises the roll center to again not allow the front end to get over the nose. With this kind of new platform vehicle, the B7 having the weight all the way forward and a lot more weight on the front tires, the front end is a lot more loaded with just more weight. And these things like the front bulkhead and the front camber link really rebalance the vehicle out and optimize your experience with the B7. So I'm currently running the 2.5 bulkhead with the -2 plates. It seems to be a pretty good combinations for a lot of different tracks. I've been running this package on carpet with the 2.5 bulkhead and the -2 plates, along with a 1 millimeter shim here and a 1 millimeter shim here. Now, to add to the roll center changes, I also wanted to talk about the front bulkhead shims. We make 1 millimeter shims, 0.5 millimeter shims, and 2 millimeter shims, as maybe you can see in the frame here. But ultimately, what this is doing is raising and lowering the roll center. The more washers you put underneath the bulkhead, the pills and the pins go lower to the ground. When these are closer to the ground, that means the roll center is at its lowest point. But the higher or less shims that you run or take out, the pins are closer towards this ball stud, which means the roll center is a lot higher. Here at Hobby Action, I'm running a 2 millimeter bulkhead shim to kind of get the front end a little bit more active. To me, with the different traction levels, if you're looking for more steering, typically you want to lower your front roll center by adding shims. And if your car is too edgy to drive, then you would want to take out shims. So for me, I like a lot of steering. I'm running it pretty aggressively. I'm running 2. For the normal person or average person, I would recommend running 1. So this is going to be one of the most single-handedly important upgrades that I've done to my car recently. This is a J-Concept steering rack and bell cranks assembly that just got released. I'm going to be going through on why this makes the biggest difference, or can make the biggest difference, when tuning your kick-up and your caster settings for your bump steer. It's super crucial to make sure your bump steer is going for your front tire straight up and down through the full shock stroke of the suspension. You don't want any bump out, you don't want any bump in, or at least you don't want excessive amounts of bump in or bump out. And what this steering lock allows you to do without changing your bell crank height is, with an insert, you can run a high hole or the lower hole. And this insert, as you can see, is ovaled out so you can screw your ball stud in the low hole or high hole position. And basically, if I'm going to run the high hole location, I run this insert all the way up. It sits in there flush, and then on this side, you screw in the ball stud as seen on this side right there. And what that does is, what that achieves is reaffixing your bump steer depending on what caster block inserts you're running. Currently, I'm running +2.5 bulkhead and 0 caster block inserts. And what that does, the 0 caster block inserts puts this ball stud, the outer ball stud, um, super high, which means that this ball stud gets lower. In order to fix your bump steer, you have to run the bell cranks in the high positions. Well, in the kit, you can raise or lower it to fix your bump steer issue. But one thing that not many people or hardly anybody has considered, when you raise your bell cranks with the kit bell crank inserts, um, either raising or lower, this ball stud also goes higher and lower. And what that does is your servo starts to lose leverage for your EPAs when it goes full left and full right. Basically, when this ball stud gets lower than this ball stud, you start to lose leverage and holding power for when your EPAs are being set. So the whole pros and cons of the steering rack system is to keep the leverage point always the same as the kit, but also being able to achieve proper bump steer for your tire depending on what caster block inserts you're running. So for me, I'm running the high hole location and 0 caster block inserts with the +2.5 bulkhead, which has been the best balance so far. And then, of course, if you're readjusting your caster and you want to go to 2.5 or 5 caster block inserts, then you would flip this ball stud to the lower hole position, and then your bump steer would be fixed. Instead of having to take your top deck off and changing your bell crank height with the T-hat bushings, there's no longer having to take this cap off, changing the T-hat bushings to raise or lower your bell cranks. You simply can just take this ball stud out, flip the insert, and put the hole in the other location that you're running to achieve your proper bump steer. Other than that, that's one of the coolest features that I've been able to find so far when it comes to getting more bang for your buck. And we're on to the next setup tip. The next talk is -2 towers. J Concepts and a few other companies makes -2 towers. I believe Associate is in the works of offering a -2 front and rear tower. And recently, a few days ago, I did do a full test on what it does, why I think it should be done, or why I shouldn't, for that matter. Here at Hobby Action Raceway, we have a sweeper at the end of the straightaway. You're basically going Mach 10, and you're just sawing on the wheel, turning. A few times I was able to catch and flip and then in the straightaway. So I kind of wanted to isolate a -2 rear tower, and which is what I have installed right now. And what that does is it's lowering the shocks by -2 millimeters, but it's taking into account the shock angle. So it's not exactly just taking the holes and lowering them 2 millimeters down. It's actually readjusting the shocks angle and putting them stood out. So it's for proper geometry reasons. And when I did the -2 rear tower on the back of my B7, I instantly noticed how my car did not want to flip at the end of the straightaway, but I actually lost a lot of steering. So that was actually really surprising. To me, it just felt like it threw a lot. It kept the rear more sealed to the track and didn't allow the car to lift the inside tire to flip. What that does when you're lowering the shock tower is the piston actually sits in a different spot in the body. So the piston's actually sitting higher in the body than it was when it was a tall tower. And for whatever reason, what that did for me on the track was it actually seemed like it sealed to the track better. But like I said, it lost a lot of front end steering feel. So what I did was I did the -2 tower, went out and ran. I noticed that it didn't flip it in the straightaway. But then what I also figured out was I actually like standing out the shocks one hole on the tower to kind of make it a little bit stiffer to then throw weight into the sweeper on the outside front tire. So what that did is it gave me the comfort level to throw the car in without flipping, but also gave this standing the shock out gave me the steering feel that I lost when I did the -2 tower. The front tower location, personally, I haven't tested yet, but I know the guys at SDRC from this past weekend's Top Gun Shootout, people like Matty G, the Raymond twins, and even Davey Bada, he won the two-wheel drive mod class. The -2 tower, from what they were saying, was a pretty big improvement for corner speed and not flipping. The one other thing that's also really critical about this conversation with doing the -2 towers is you have to change the shock eyelet. The reason behind that is if you just simply lower the towers, the car will get more droop. Well, when you change whatever shock eyelet that you are running, if you're running +2 eyelet with 28.5 millimeter stroke, you'll have to go to a 0 eyelet and keep in the same overall stroke number. That way the droop and up travel stay the same, and you shouldn't really have to change much with your ride height once you change it. So that's basically what I've been able to find with the -2 towers. As you can hear behind me that there's tracks of slashes going on around the track, so it's a bit loud now. Hopefully these things that I talked about really helps you guys out with your car settings and consistencies going around the track. Hopefully going to be doing a lot more of these videos for you guys to kind of see the latest and greatest. Maybe do it once a month. Please leave your feedback. If you have any suggestions on any kind of videos you think that we should do, Please leave a comment below, like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe. And thank you guys for tuning in.